the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace.
Hey, good afternoon, and welcome to our inaugural version of Seventh Inning Stretch, brought to you by the Masters of Baseball. And our sole purpose is to educate both parents and student athletes by speaking with some of the game's brightest and biggest coaches, players, and in today, Major League pitching coach with the New York Yankees, Matt Blake. Matt, we've known each other now for almost 15 years. Thank you for coming today. I greatly appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me on, Walt.
You're very, very welcome. So long before the New York Yankees and long before the Cleveland Indians with regard to professional baseball, Matt Blake was, basically hanging out, Cressy Performance, Hudson, Mass, and working with a lot of young pitchers from anywhere from 12 to, into college. So that's kind of what we want to talk about today. And really what I want to bring to parents and student athletes, specifically those that pitch, what's the initial work routine or some of the important factors to begin to work on as a young pitcher with regard to weekly routines? Meaning, we know we're going to pitch at some point during the week, but what does a week look like for a young pitcher, both in season and then as we get into the off seasons?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it can go a lot of different ways depending on, the level that the player is at, whether it's 12 or 18 and kind of the setting they're in, if it's a team setting versus an independent setting. But I think the biggest thing at that age is trying to get a sense of structure and routine and just one day throwing program to start. If you're 12 and 13 years old, there's probably a lot of haphazard catch play going on. So I think just from the get-go, learning like what one throwing program should look like on a daily basis, as far as, do I like the long toss? Do I not like the long toss? Do I shuffle my feet? Do I not shuffle my feet? Like as simple as finding something that you can get in a routine doing so you can build some consistency. And then once you do that, then you can start to say, okay, I did A on day one, and I'm going to do B on day two, and I'm going to do C on day three. And that might be as simple as low intensity throwing on one day, medium intensity, and high intensity. And I think that's the biggest thing is once you have one throwing program that you can execute, then it's learning how to dial the intensity up and down throughout the course of a week so that you're not just full throttle all the time or not pushing yourself enough. And I think that's a big part of learning who you are as a pitcher when you're getting to that point of playing on the big diamond at 13, 14, 15.
When you're a 13 through 15-year-old pitcher, let's call that the junior high or that kind of that youth level pre-high school varsity pitcher, the proper number of reps always comes into question with regard to, should my son be throwing 40, playing catch with 40 pitches, 50? I know there's no set number, but what's a good comfort level range of number of throws, both with the low intensity, then the medium intensity, and then obviously with the high intensity and long toss? What's a good rep range for student athletes?
Yeah, so I think, starting with like, say, day one of throwing, your typical throwing program is probably going to be 40 to 50 throws from, 45 to 60 to 75 feet in that range. And then over the course of a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you're typically building up. So you're getting into the range of, say, 80 to 90 throws, 80 to 100 throws, but incrementally gaining that, intensity and volume over time. And then obviously the more specific you can be and objective, the easier it is to manage those jumps. So you're not getting outside of, a window that you're prepared for. At our level, we call that, acute and chronic stress. So we want to kind of over time build up the volume and intensity so you don't have these spikes where I'm going to throw in a 80 pitch bullpen, but I've only practiced throwing 30 pitches. I think it's just always making sure you're not making jumps of, say, more than 10 to 15 throws in any given session.
Could you talk a little bit about grips and how to, kind of add those to a throwing routine? Meaning a lot of young pitchers don't really play catch enough with their changeup grip. They tend to focus on fastball and that breaking ball. Can you just discuss the importance of working all your grips into your throwing routines?
Yeah, I've found that the most value I've seen guys get out of working on their changeups probably in that throwing program long toss phase where everybody plays catch with the four-seamer. for the most part. Some guys play catch with a two-seamer if that's their specialty, but knowing what your primary fastball grip is, whether it's four-seam or two-seam, and then as you work your long toss, say it's 150, 180, 200, however far you want to go. And then as you get out to those distances, say beyond 120, 150, start to incorporate the changeup grip there and alternate against the fastball grip so you can get a better feel for, am I killing distance? Is my ball moving off the fastball line? And you get a better understanding of maybe the ball flight in general. And then on the way back in, when you start doing, say, maybe pull downs, back to 90, back to 75, and you're getting on the ball, that point, you've got a pretty good read of, is this ball doing anything different from my four seam or two seam? And you can kind of get a better perspective before you get onto the mound at 60 feet of, is this grip working for me? And all those adjustments you could have been working out there.
So one of the follow-ups that I always get when I'm talking with parents is, obviously we're not dealing with a Jamison Tyon and a Garrett Cole and a Jordan Montgomery. We're talking about a high school or middle school student athlete, and they want to get into that in-season routine. That kind of falls apart. We have this off-season routine. We get into a good, structured daily program, but you get in season, you get rainouts and things. For a general rule of thumb, when a pitcher throws as a starting pitcher and he throws, let's say on a Monday, what should the week kind of entail with regard to a throwing routine?
Yeah. So assuming you're Monday, you've got like a 7-day window here. I would say typically call, Monday a high intensity day. Tuesday is probably going to be a lighter recovery day. Some maybe even no throw. It's up to the personal preference. And I would think you're going to start to wave the intensity back up over the course of the week before you pull it down and then get back to your Monday. So I would say, if, you're at, call it, 50% on, Tuesday, 65 to 70% on Wednesday, your Thursday, Friday window, you're going to start to push it a little bit again. And that might be a bullpen day, either on Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, depending on how close you want this to go to your next game. But I would think you're trying to wave your intensity back up to that Thursday, Friday window, get some quality repetitions in, whether it's aggressive long toss or bullpens, and then pull it back down on, say, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and maybe like a flat ground on Sunday, and just preparing yourself for Monday. But thinking of it not as I went high and then I'm not going to do anything the rest of the week and then go high again on Monday, or I went high on Monday and then I kind of tried to stay there across the week. It's really hard to sustain that. So trying to find a way to kind of wave the intensity across the week so you're getting some recovery, but you're still getting some good work in. Now, if you're a two-way player, you need to be considerate of my throwing program versus my skill work in the infield or outfield, and being mindful of repetitions in between innings of if I'm throwing the ball around at my position, if I'm taking ground balls and I'm throwing across the diamond. Make sure you're counting all those reps. And in a lot of ways, we would try and protect those guys in high school. If you're a two-way player, a lot of those reps, maybe just put it in a bucket and get most of your work where you can account for it in your throwing program and your bullpens. And then when you need a handful of reps, you have them, but don't waste your bullets on the infield if that's not your focus.
See, I think that's tremendous, because a lot of players, especially throughout the junior high and high school levels, they tend to be those two-way guys, especially the guys with arms. One last topic I want to cover with regard to just the younger level pitching is the role that flat ground work, or what is sometimes referred to as short box work. A lot of parents are not familiar with that. Most student athletes just climb up there on the bump and they just kind of grab the ball, they do their bullpen, and off they go. Could you just speak quickly to the benefit of the short box or the flat ground work with regard to getting feel for not only shape, but, the ability to command and control pitches from a shorter distance?
Yeah, I think it's critical for a developing pitcher to understand how to, moderate their intensity in these short box or flat ground environments, because there's only so many reps we can get on the mound at full speed. So trying to find a way to sharpen or keep your arsenal tight, in these, whether it's 50 foot on the flat ground, it's 45 on the flat ground. Some guys like to, and we've moved to this a lot at our level, of getting guys on the front of the slope and having the catcher maybe up in front a little bit, where they're still getting the timing of the slope downhill, especially for the breaking ball. So you're able to create the shape you want. But any way to kind of get some delivery reps in, some feel for the delivery timing, and then some visuals of like how I'm moving the ball around at less than 100% intensity, I think is critical. And a lot of our guys are probably doing that, I would say 3-4 days a week to some degree.
Okay, we're joined today by Matt Blake, Major League pitching coach for the New York Yankees, who's been kind enough to join us here. And you know, it's February, and sooner or later we're going to get to that spring training time of year. So I want to kind of dive in, Matt, if we can, to a little bit of what the repetitions might look like at the major league level, but are really not done in what I call high enough volume, really with regard to pickoff moves. And the value with the repetition that comes from that, as well as fielding your position. You know, a lot of times runner on first and second, ground ball right back to the pitcher, you know, and all of those kind of mechanics of, you know, taking the ball, bringing it into your chest, getting your energy, moving towards the direction of the bag. It's not really focused on at the lower levels, junior high, high school, and lower levels of travel ball. Can you talk about what the reps kind of look like and the volume kind of look like with regard to both of those topics at the spring training level?
Yeah, so that's a huge point of emphasis for us in spring training, obviously. And some of it's, you know, just because of the way the time flows in a daily practice. But I do think one mistake that a lot of people make is assuming that at our level, major leaguers know how to field their position and pick the bases, and it leaves you exposed when the games start. And obviously, if it's a problem at the major league level, it's going to be a problem all the way down. So there needs to be daily intentional focus. And for us, we sprinkle it in pretty much daily in spring training. And then as the season goes, basically every homestand, we have a session where the players are getting on the mound, feeling their position, throwing to bases from pick plays, just to keep things sharp and consistent and intentional. And I think that's the biggest thing for us at the major league level, and it really carries on throughout all baseball, is that making sure that there's some detail and intentionality in the fielding of the repetitions that you're putting on you know, for pitchers fielding practice and pickoffs. Because I think what happens is a lot of guys go through the motions and don't do it game speed. And then it ends up when the game turns on, that's when they make the mistakes because they haven't gone through the right speed of how to make this play. And it doesn't need to be a lot of reps, but it needs to be focused and intentional reps that you get the quality work in on.
One of the other dynamics to being a high-level pitcher is a topic that's near and dear to me, which is poise and composure, and the role that it plays with regard to being a pitcher, whether it's a starting pitcher, setup, middle innings, you know, late innings, et cetera. Can you just talk about how you interact, you know, not only with the Yankees, but how you've interacted with student athletes, getting their mental component, which is a big topic in today's baseball landscape, how to prepare themselves mentally for the highs and the lows of being a pitcher.
Yeah, totally. And I think this is a huge separator for players. Is, you know, obviously there's on-field talent that's going to give you a certain floor, but your ability to control your mind and your breathing and things along those lines are going to be separator skills. And it's something that's kind of built into your daily process. And just like anything, you got to work on it. And so a lot of the things that we're focused on at our level would be just centering around, like, what's your thought structure in between pitches? You know, so say it's 20 seconds from the time you threw the pitch to the next time you're on the rubber preparing to throw the next pitch. How do you control that time? What does it look like? What's your process? Andy McKay with the Mariners has some really good thoughts on this that I've seen over the years in terms of, you know, how you work through these rhythms and routines around the 20 seconds. And I think once you identify what works for you as far as, you know, maybe accepting what's happened, identifying what's happened after the pitch, working around the mound, starting to process how you're going forward, controlling your mind to get back to the present and focus on the next pitch. I think those things are really important, and they need to be practiced in your bullpens, in your catch play. And I think some of the things I've seen from the best pitchers are that they're the best catch play guys too. Their throwing programs mimic their work on the mound. You know, Corey Kluber comes to mind, Masahiro Tanaka comes to mind, Garrett Cole comes to mind. These guys, when you watch them play catch, are as locked in that portion of their day as they are when the game's on the line. And that's a lot what it allows them to kind of stay who they are and not let this game kind of get too big and speed up on them. And so it's really the daily intentionality in the throwing program and the bullpens that kind of sets that all up.
Okay, this is our final question, and this has kind of been a hot topic this week. I'm sure you looked over at the Vandy Boys' latest media stir with regard to the wristband or the Apple Watch, whatever it is. I know it's technology at its finest if it has to do with it. When do pitchers and catchers really have to, or when should they begin to start to learn the nuances of calling their own game rather than relying on the guy on the bucket or the coach in the dugout? I know it's something that's part of the high school and travel ball and obviously college. You don't see that a lot in Major League or professional baseball, do you? Or am I wrong with that?
No, I think it's maybe starting to creep in a little bit more at certain levels of the minor leagues where there's some development goals that are associated with why coaches might call certain pitches from the dugout, or at the major league level, if there's some situational base running going on, and you're also kind of maybe starting to factor in a pitch call here and there. But for the most part, they kind of play the game, on the field, and it's kind of left to their devices of how they call the game. But it's a lot of the preparation before the game and then in between innings, kind of checking in on the thought process, the decision making, to try and help them make sure we're on the same path and the same plan. And I think even at the amateur level and the high school and college ranks, and a lot of the coaches I've talked to, there's a time and a place to call pitches, for you as a coach to, make sure we're trying to win the game in the most efficient way possible. And there's a time and a place to let the players call the game, one, because I think at the end game, like, the players should know what they're doing and have the best feel from catcher to pitcher and what's happening in the box. And then there should be supplemented from the side if there's things that we're seeing. But I think having enough, back and forth in between innings, to allow them to make decisions, and then maybe having a mechanism where you can call in a pitch from time to time, but giving them some rope is really important from the education standpoint. Not that I'm saying they have to make every decision on their own, but I think having a mechanism to have the conversation for the feedback about why we're selecting pitches and why it may or may not work out, things like that are really important.
Okay, this is not really a question. I'm going to end on this question. So knowing you for the length of time that I have, I've always wondered, for those coaches who weren't were not professional players.
Yep.
Just give us your thoughts and feelings when you put on the Yankee uniform for your first big league game, where you knew you were going to be an active participant in a big league game. Like, you were big league at that point. Do you remember walking onto the field? Can you just share with people what it felt like to know you were in the big leagues?
Yeah, it was interesting because it was 2020 and we're in Washington. We're the opening game for the major leagues that year, and it's Cole versus Scherzer, and there's nobody in the stands, so it's a little bit of a weird dynamic that you're standing behind Garrett Cole, his first game for the Yankees, going against Max Scherzer for the Nationals, and for us, it's like, wow, this is baseball. Like, this is like real level baseball. And I think that was probably step one. And then, when it really hit me last year was when, we're in Fenway, it's packed, they're cheering, they're all over us. We're Yankees. I grew up, obviously, a New Englander, so rooting for the Red Sox, but, being in the locker room in Fenway, hearing the Fenway faithful, how loud they are, like, that was I think the time when it really hit you, like, wow, this is, this is not fake anymore. This is the real deal. So what an experience that was.
Well, I can tell you, I've enjoyed watching it. I watch a lot of games on the Yes Network when I just want to kind of check in and kind of get a peek at you with Booney in the dugout. And, I know how hard you work to get to that level, and how the attention to detail with student athletes that were 12 and 13, way back in 08 and 09, and obviously with my son Tyler, and all the hard work you put in. So congratulations. You've earned it. And obviously you're one of the best in the business to be one of 30 major league pitching coach. I appreciate it that you joined us here today you're our inaugural guest. You're the first. Love it. So any mistakes I made,
it was great.
Shared with me after this broadcast. But again, I wish you nothing but the best this year. I hope you come in second place in the AL East. I'll be rooting for you when you're not playing the Red Sox.
That's right.
Giants for that matter, but I don't think you guys are on the West circuit this year, maybe next year. So, Matty, thank you very, very much. I greatly appreciate it.
Walt. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. Good luck this year.
Thanks, Walt.